All right, welcome back to Blue by 90. I'm Justin, joined by Tanner today, and we've got a special guest, a friend of mine from WXYZ and all over social media these days. He's Detroit's own Brad Galli. Brad, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Tanner, you are just embodying the true spirit of every single human being in the state of Michigan, except maybe a few Upers right now. That Lions thing, man. Everybody's wearing Lions gear right now.
Man, it's incredible. We have a almost 6 month old daughter, and we went to the Rally House yesterday or the day before and got her a Jared Goff jersey, which I was waiting for her to start chanting. And
Her first words, right?
yeah, but very excited to see her in it, and it's bigger so she can wear it over her layers. It's gonna be cold on Saturday. Thankfully, the game's indoors.
Oh man, that's great. That's really great.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, the excitement around Detroit right now and all of the whole state of Michigan is honestly something. I mean, we've seen it over the years with Michigan and Michigan State when that, game comes to that weekend or whatever, obviously the state is always buzzing, but to have the whole state come behind one team, especially an NFL team, we just haven't seen it. I mean, I was talking to my dad the other day, like he hasn't seen it in his lifetime, right? And so just crazy what's going on right now.
I've started to see some of the car flags pop up, you guys. If you remember growing up in this state and seeing all the Red Wings flags in the 90s and early 2000s, it's reminiscent of that. And it was funny. One of our news reporters at Channel 7 yesterday told me, he goes, the beautiful thing about the Lions, he covered throughout the political calendar in 2024. He goes, at different rallies within the state of Michigan, at a Trump rally and at a Harris rally, he heard Jared Goff cheese break out. He's like, the Lions, everybody just loves it. It's the one thing everybody can agree on. And to your point, Michigan and Michigan State, yeah, there's passion behind both fan bases, but the Lions are really that great unifier where everybody can come together and say, it means so much to my family, to your family, to our family. And then you kind of just come together, toast, and here we go. It's unprecedented territory right now.
I love it. It's America's team, right? I think it goes beyond the state of Michigan a little bit. Amon Ra kind of makes us the villain, some of those guys now, but for a while, I still think we're one of the more likable teams in the postseason.
I think the Chiefs are likable, and people want to throw darts in my face every time I say that. I think when you get good, people start throwing a little bit of hate your way. There's jealousy that comes in. People just assume you get calls because you're a darling. You get calls because you earn them, because you're a smart football team. I mean, it's simple as a quarterback throwing at a guy who's being held. Good teams know how to win in any possible way, and covering Dan Campbell closely, all he says all the time, it doesn't have to be pretty. And this season, a lot of times with the defense they've had, the injuries they've had, he doesn't care how they win. Nobody in that building does, as long as they put wins together. They put 15 together in the regular season, and he loudly said it this week, you guys. We have the number one seed. We're not apologizing for it. We earned it, but now we have to go earn the next step. And it's going to be an exciting one Saturday night.
Yeah, I think, we've talked about this. I'm very passionate about it because, I have people that I know that are like, oh, I'm rooting for the Lions. And it's almost a little condescending. There's a little drip of that in there, right? And it's like, I want to be at a point where being a fan of the Lions is similar to being a fan of the Chiefs or the Patriots back in the 2010s and 2000s because they're winning. And it's not the feel-good story, right? Like, I don't think any Lions fan should want like that feel-good tag placed on the Lions. No, they're the number one seed. They're 15-2. They swept the NFC North, and they were dominant in Week 18. And, for a franchise that the last time they won a championship, the Pistons were in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Like, yeah, I can see why people may get a little frustrated with Lions fandom right now. But to your point, Brad, it is really taking over the state, and it is a great bridge between Michigan and Michigan State fans, with us being a more Michigan-centric podcast. But it's a fantastic time to be a Detroit sports fan right now.
I will tell you, a lot of these guys in that locker room understand the history of football. They understand how bad the Lions have been for decades. But honestly, you guys, I mean, for the last couple of years, Jared Goff especially has been so loud and almost frustrated and angered by questions about, you've changed history. He's like, we've only been here for 4 years as a group.
Right.
We don't care about what happened in the past. I'm sorry. They'll make the point that they care about the fans and the suffering they went through, and that makes it that much sweeter. But these guys have come in and proven they're winners. And I think, Tanner, if they go through this run, they get to the Super Bowl or win it, I think you go into next season and they are certainly not a darling.
I'm looking
almost
forward
the same way the Bengals a couple years ago, right, when they finally made it with Burrow. They've not been back since, but they're viewed as a different type of the Bengals, in a different sort of air, where the Bills have been under Josh Allen now and Sean McDermott for a while. I think once you get consistent winning, that darling thing goes out the window and people start to want to see you fall.
Yeah, I definitely think they don't identify themselves as the Lions of old, right? It's that brand new Lions type, and it's almost like a separate organization. Once Sheila started and Brad Holmes, and they've almost like left that chapter behind, which has obviously worked out. So all right, so Lions this weekend. I mean, I'm super pumped. It's definitely the most important game of the weekend, right? Whatever's going on in that national championship game, and on Monday, who cares? Nobody cares,
A lot of people care, but I just tell you, man, the scheduling, the CFP's gonna have to figure it out. It has gotten so lost in the shuffle of NFL playoffs, man. It's crazy. It's weird.
It is weird. It honestly, the other whatever that's semifinal on Thursday, I woke up, I was like, is there a semifinal game on today? It's kind of crazy. But all right, let's talk some Michigan football though. That's what this podcast is about. So you have had the honor, I would call it, to get to go into Schembechler Hall once a week over the past. When did you start that?
Jim's first year.
So you got a behind the scenes look at Coach Harbaugh and now Coach Moore. Let's take it back a little bit with Harbaugh. Just, I have been with him a few times behind the scenes, so I get to see more than I would say the average fan. I'm sure you've gotten a lot more than me, but what would you say is there a big difference to Coach Harbaugh when he's in public or in the press conference compared to when you're just hanging with him behind the scenes?
Yeah, definitely. I think he also evolved at Michigan. I think it was going from Stanford to the NFL. You don't have to play the recruiting game as hard, right? Like you don't have to sell your program. You can just go and do your work, almost like we've seen him with the Chargers right now. But when he came to Michigan, I think recruiting was something where he said, as one of the most competitive people I've ever met in my life, maybe the most competitive person, he wanted to win, and he wanted to win every battle. And I think that was in his head every time he stepped in front of a microphone, every time a camera was on, every time he did a radio interview from 5 minutes after he was hired with Colin Cowherd, the infamous where he blew up at him. And are you talking? Where's the dead space? His competitiveness fueled everything we saw. We got him at Schembechler Hall after the first couple of years, but the first season, I think we did it at Chrysler Center. And we would go to the TV studio, and we'd walk with him. I would wait and walk, or sometimes I'd be in the studio waiting for him to come through. And he'd vent about questions, but you could just tell it was rooted often in trying to protect his players and trying to, if someone would say, what was wrong with the scheme? And he'd come back and say, well, I don't want to out our freshman linebacker who stepped up for a guy who's been injured. So I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to sound like an idiot unless I have something planned. So yeah, he'd come back and get frustrated. And there was one time I remember the room was dark and not well lit, and he kind of almost tripped over a wire. But one of his favorite lines, he stopped and caught himself, and he goes, "A lesser athlete would have fallen."
I've stolen that so many times from his presser, Brad. I say it all the time to my wife.
It's great. And then we turned the corner, and the door was locked, and he just looks. He's like, "Come on, mistakes are being made." He's a funny guy, and I think we really got to see that out in front of cameras. Especially the last few years at Michigan. I think the nation, once he got that Michigan hat off, and again, like you guys were talking about, people that are detractors of Michigan, he put the Chargers hat on. It was almost like every line we've heard for the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years that he said at Charger press conferences, people are like, "That's so cute and funny." We had it firsthand. I got to get to really know the guy, and it was a treat. It really was a treat. I can share more stories as we get going, but I don't want to talk for 10 minutes without letting you guys jump in.
Yeah.
Well, Brad, I was going to ask, being there from day one through the end of his tenure, what was the biggest tangible change that you noticed in the way that maybe he operated? Because there clearly was a shift, right, of the earlier years through, 2020, and then 2021 kind of seemed to revitalize. Was there anything that you noticed in particular, anything you could point to that kind of he changed, more than some other things?
He denied it publicly, and I would even press him, and he'd never admitted to it. But yeah, I think we can all see it, right? But I do think the talent changed a lot of it as well. I think that group that came back from that 2020 season, And then having JJ in the building, I think, changed a ton. Let's be honest. Look, you're not going to win without a quarterback. And if you look at the first years of his tenure with respect to all those guys that were there that have gone on to do great things, whether it's in football or otherwise, JJ was the best quarterback he had. I think that changed a lot. We were standing on the field of the national championship, and his kids, Jim's kids, it was Grace and James. I said, man, what a night. What a night. And they're like, yeah, it is. I don't know how we're going to get back to the hotel. There's not enough room. And I go, what are you looking at? And they're like, well, we're not his favorite kid tonight. I'm like, he has a favorite kid? Yeah, it's JJ. Like, what? He tells us all the time JJ's his favorite kid. I think that team brought out such a life in him at the perfect time, right? Where his back was against the wall, his contract had become so public. There was a shift because he put so much trust in people. But I think too, man, he would tell you he was the same guy. It was just kind of maybe not worrying so much about the perception of, come here, dude. The perception of recruiting and just trying to win. This is my son, Matthew.
Hi.
What's up?
What's
man?
up, buddy?
Good.
What's your hot take? You got some hot takes about the Lions this weekend? Are they going to
We're
win?
talking Michigan. We're talking Michigan football with these guys. When they're asking me about Coach Harbaugh, and who was your favorite player from that championship team?
JJ McCarthy.
Yeah.
Shocker.
There you go. There you go. I love it. He was my favorite too. Him and Blake.
Yeah.
Decorum, right?
All right, Big Dog. I'm going to talk with these guys for a little bit. You go do your homework, brush your teeth, eat a good healthy. I'm kidding. Go take care of yourself, and I'll see you in a minute.
Love you.
Love you, buddy.
Come on.
No, it was cool, man. Just a quick aside. I grew up in Michigan, won the championship in '97, watched Michigan State win the championship in 2000, and he got to see it almost the same age. And that's pretty cool. My daughter is a year younger, too. And they've got to go all in. I will get back to the Harbaugh stuff. I think he challenged me a lot because I did his radio show for 2 years. And he got ticked at me sometimes. And he almost had a point sometimes. He'd go, you're going to ask the same question that everybody else is asking. You asked me at the press conference. You can ask me at the one-on-one with the TV. And now you're going to ask me on my radio show. Like, dude, come on. Can we get into stuff about the game? Like, this is the chance to do it.
Right.
But he had his heart, was a competitive dude. And when he saw the writing on the wall, I think he finally could sit back and be like, I can have fun with this. How much do we hear that, Justin? Right? Like at the end, Tanner?
Yes.
Where it's like, I'm having fun with this team. And it almost reminded him of why he loved everything so much.
Well, I think it honestly, you mentioned the guys that came back after that 2020 season. And I think, he saw a lot of himself in Aiden Hutchinson, right? And that started it. Obviously, Hutch was the leader of that team. What I have always said, too, is that the difference in that team or in this run was it was sandwiched with Aiden as the senior leader and then JJ and Donovan as the freshman leaders as well. And, it wasn't just seniors in all these freshmen were following, but JJ and Donovan, I remember them talking about them leading kind of from the back a little bit too. And so everybody was pushing each other. And a lot of the guys that we talked to at that time, Jake Moody, Brad Robbins, Joel Huntingford, like some of those guys would just talk about, they would actually say too, coaches know he's not any different, that he didn't switch, meetings or whatever. It was just, I think he turned it over to his players, and it was a lot more player led and trust in his guys instead of, the guys that I know from 2016 and 2017, 2018, it was a dictatorship. Jim Harbaugh led everything. And there, obviously he was still, he loved telling people what to do, and it was still hardcore, but he gave his guys the opportunity to lead themselves. And I think that was the shift that at least I saw from my perspective.
Yeah, I think, Tanner, you want to go jump in? I'll let you talk too much here. I keep rambling on you, man.
No, man, you're the guest. No, you go ahead and answer that, because I think it's interesting to look at the 9 years that Jim Harbaugh was at the University of Michigan, and some of the shortcomings in the earlier years, and a lot of that was perception based upon the fact that Ohio State was essentially a juggernaut, and it was tough to get past them because otherwise they were multiple times 10-1 going into that. But that shift in allowing them to come off that COVID season and, go on that run they did, I think is just a marvelous coaching job from Jim.
I think the question I got asked all the time, what's it like interviewing him? What's it like interviewing him? I loved it, man. He made me better at what I do, just on a professional, like black and white level from that way. But man to man, I really enjoyed the company. We talked football a lot off the record, especially as the years went on. We would talk off the record a lot, like after we got done recording. And then he got creative. And I will tell you, one of the funniest things that turned into one of the most fruitful things for both of us, we both benefited from it. We genuinely were getting emails, and I got like a handwritten letter from somebody and a text from a couple people in the business. Why do you guys keep going to the same spot on the practice field, standing there and talking? You've done the same thing for years. And I told him that, and his eyes lit up, and he goes, "We have to get competitive. We have to be." What do you say? We can't get stale. We can't get stale. And hold on, I got an idea. And that was leading into the first run after leading up to that Aiden Ohio State win, the first win over Ohio State. And you guys, we bounced around his office after they beat Ohio State that year. He's like, I got an idea. We walked up his staircase. He goes, "We're going to do the interview in our office." And he walked us through. We stayed in there for 45 minutes. He was telling stories about every guy that he got drafted, that's been drafted under him. I mean, it was unbelievable. But again, it goes back to that, like, what are people saying? Absolutely not. You know what? That's a good point. We got to look at the tape. We got to be better. We need to improve. And the amount of traffic those videos got, it was just bananas. I mean, talk about like a recruiting tool for him, but just for the access that we were giving fans and for people to tune into us after that win over Ohio State. We went into that next season. He wanted to go everywhere and anywhere. It was a blast, man. We got to see so many parts of that building. And then it was funny watching Charles Woodson and Fox's production team, ESPN's production team, a couple weeks after, where we would go to a certain spot. You know, Dave Abloff and the great team at Michigan, Chad Shepard, those guys are great, would work with them to like go into those locations, and we would kind of go like, we did it first. That was great. We did it first.
It is kind of funny because I think you mentioned it, he made you better at your job. He's one of those people that he wants to succeed so badly, and he does make everybody around him better, because when you're around him, you're like, I got to be as good as him. I got to keep working hard and doing whatever.
Justin, I emceed his golf outing, and he comes to me, and I'm sitting on the chair. He goes, "Is this the heaviest you've ever been?" I'm like, "Shoot, man, I just said, my wife just gave birth to our second kid in 14 months. Like, I haven't slept, no excuses, but I got," he's like, "Let's work on that." I'm like, like, and then he hit his shoulder. But yeah, that's the kind of guy he is.
That's so good. So, all right. So you flip the chapter to Sharon Moore after you win the national title, the best 3-year run in Michigan football history. Coach Harbaugh raises the trophy, and he moves on in what we all kind of knew what was going to be the end of his Michigan tenure. I don't know that we knew that it was going to be after raising a national championship trophy, but I think we all knew he wanted to go back to the NFL. And then Sharon really cemented himself, obviously, in that 3-game stretch there at the end of the 2023 season, while Coach Harbaugh was suspended. What was it like then, when you all of a sudden that office is no longer Jim Harbaugh's, it's Sharon Moore's, and he watched Jim Harbaugh for a long time in that. For you to go in, was it ever like you felt like Sharon was like, okay, this is mine now? I used to be on the other side of the desk. Like, what was Coach Moore's, what was he like when he took that over?
I will tell you, nothing about him was like that. He very much knew he needed to be himself. And that was evident. And that became evident to me very quickly. He took me for the first interview we had into their recruiting center now, in their player lounge. It's not recruiting center, it's the player lounge, but it obviously is what they show recruits, with the bowling alley, the barber shop, and then all the trophies and the national championship and Rose Bowl jerseys. But no, it was very clear, like, this is, and we know it. I mean, nobody's like Jim Harbaugh, but this is a different man. This is Sharon Moore. And I think part of the tough thing of this Michigan football season, losses are always going to be the toughest part. But I think the toughest part for fans and for really football people was getting to know this man. He had never been a head coach before. And to take over the reins of this program after a national championship, we didn't know who he was. And I think that was by design. He didn't want to make it about him. One of the selfless leader type of, outputs that he wanted out there. But it took a while for, I think, us to get to know him. And that's what my challenge was every week. And he just did not want it to be about him. He didn't want the anecdotes to be, and, every coach will tell you that, but Sharon really, really, really wanted to, separate and be like, I'm Sharon Moore, but this is not Sharon Moore's program. This is the University of Michigan. I'm the steward leading the charge. I'm going to be my own guy. And I think we saw throughout the year, I think he became more comfortable in the way that he was designing the offense, the way that he was leading the charge, in that now I think we can say clearly it's Sharon Moore's program. It is a Michigan football program, but he finally, I think, got the reins, I think, comfortably by the end of the year. They were humming at a pretty good clip, halfway through that season, figuring out what they were doing, and we saw how they finished, beating Ohio State. But no, I think very, very, very quickly it became evident this is his office. It helped the locker room look different in a lot of the buildings. But no, he took over, and I was almost shocked of how quickly the page was turned from that championship era to basically say, like, we got to get going. We got to start this thing over. We can't live in the past.
Well, I remember too, Tanner, I'll let you go just in a second. One note there too was that there were a couple things, I think, this season that people wanted, are they going to do honoring national championship? Are they,
Yeah.
gonna do,
I think I texted you at one point.
yeah. And Sharon actually said, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I'm going to say it, that he didn't want to do any of that because it was a new era, right? It was, he wanted this team to focus on this year and the schedule that's ahead. Obviously, it didn't go the way that they, fully hoped. Obviously, you're trying to go to the college football playoff, but he really was focused on that. And they kind of wanted to say, all right, we won the Natty. That's great. But what are you doing for me now? What can we do next? So, Tanner, I'll let you jump in there.
Well, one of the questions I had in my mind before we came into this, Brad, was to ask about the difference that you felt from, working alongside Jim for a number of years to now Sharon taking over. It sounds like Sharon put emphasis on, kind of continuing that same level of standard and culture. Is that what you kind of felt with Sharon taking the reins of? It feels very, very familiar. And what was that kind of like when it, shifted from Jim to then Sharon?
I'll be honest, from my seat, where what I would go into on those Mondays with Jim, those quirky moments were almost what people grabbed onto. Not almost. The quirky moments with Jim are what people grabbed onto more. So we would usually do an interview, unless it was really off of a loss, and I would always try to tack in, like on the back end of the interview, a topic of, his family being on the cover of the MDen magazine with their funny pajamas on. Hey, what do you do? Halloween's coming up. Any strategy for getting candy? Our clips were on ESPN, GMA, things were going everywhere. With Sharon, it was very clear, like, I don't want to be disrespectful. There wasn't a monster appetite for quirky Sharon stuff because that's not who he is,
right.
So that was the challenge for me of, okay, how do I best give the audience what they're looking for? How do we best inform college football fans that either like this program, that don't like this program, that are in the middle, that are just kind of observing, what they deserve as a football audience here. And, it was a challenge at first, but and nothing against Sharon, but it was just me getting to know in a more intimate interview session who this man was and try to tell him who he all was. Jim was, as much as people thought he was, mysterious and stuff, pretty darn open book. And he would tell you, the most wild, outlandish things. With Sharon, it was, I think, at first a little bit more close to the vest. But again, you saw the comfort start to pour out towards the end of the year, the things he would say about guys, what he would say about the program, the comfort to finally say, yeah, we just beat out LSU and we got Bryce Underwood, and to kind of pump his chest a little bit and say, we got the quarterback, we went hard. In my interview, I remember I asked him one time, how much is NIL a part of your day? And he's like, 50% of my day, every day. Working on guys, going to get guys, keeping guys here, making sure they're happy, but also challenging them, challenging the program. And then he said out loud, I don't remember which game this was. It might have been 7-8 weeks into the season. He said, when I went into my interview, I said, we have to be better about all this. So, cool. Okay. Like, here we are, 7-8 weeks, right in that time of the Bryce stuff starting to get hot, where he is basically shouting to the world using our platform to say, can we do a little bit more here? What else we got? Like, how can we get this thing going here? This is the real deal. This is what I want. I'm not just some guy that's asleep on the job, despite detractors saying that. We got to see a guy who's pretty darn passionate about what he is, and he finally got to put some results on it because it wasn't just talk. So I think that was the biggest thing. This man having to prove himself to a fan base that had just watched the national championship. He did it towards the end of the season in a big, big way. And I'm excited to see how he'll walk and talk next year.
All right. Well, that's a good transition to our next topic here. So as you mentioned, we kind of joked on here the last 2 months, the last really 4 to 6 weeks of the season changed everything, right? You win the final 3 games of your season, one against Ohio State as a 20-plus point underdog on the road with no passing game, and Kalel Mullings just putting a cape on and being a dog. And then you go shock the world against Alabama with their starters. You have everybody opted out pretty much. And then you also get the number 1 quarterback in the nation, as you mentioned. You get Bryce Underwood. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, 2025 feels like we're rolling here. So what have you seen from the vibes inside Shem and from the coaching staff of going into this offseason?
The outside vibe and the perception throughout all of that, I saw behind closed doors when we would walk with Sharon. I told you we talked with Jim as time went on a lot after the conversation. Sharon, we talked after every conversation longer than we talked with Jim almost every time. Like he was so open and honest and thorough, and he'd give details. And that was a man who, behind the scenes, his confidence in the program never wavered. His confidence in what he was doing never wavered. And even when the rumors started to become a lot more public and the conversation started to get a lot louder about Bryce Underwood, I said to him off the record, what can you say? Brad, I can't say anything. But I'm just going to tell you what I've told you the whole season. We believe in what we're building here. We got what we're going. And when they finally got him, the excitement on that man's face to finally be able to talk about Bryce Underwood was remarkable. Dude, if this guy goes anywhere else, he goes out of state. This is a story. I mean, my kid just jumped in here and watched. He's going to watch him at LSU, watch him get drafted in the NFL. And I covered him in high school for 4 years. My daughter will say, isn't that the kid you interviewed? Yeah. Why did he go to LSU? Well, it's kind of complicated. Well, Michigan went and got the guy, the in-state guy, the number 1 recruit in the country. Doesn't always work out. He's saying all the right things. He's putting the work in. They believe in him. It'd be really cool for the program, for this state, for this high school football community. If it does work out, it'd be awesome for the kid, for the family. They went and got their guy. And I think it changed so much. We've seen what it's done to the transfer portal. Big donors jumping out publicly or through, other mouths saying how much they're really supporting this thing. How much has the conversation changed? I think it's almost done a 180. I mean, it couldn't have changed more than it had after Jim left, and people thought, well, Michigan doesn't want to do NIL. Michigan doesn't want to play the game. They don't want to do the transfer thing. The complete opposite right now.
For sure. Yeah, it's definitely felt that way. And I do think just the difference in the fan base's support and excitement changes a lot of what happens in that building too. I do think that, as much as a coach or a player always wants to say like, yeah, we're focused, we don't listen to the outside world. I think that's BS, and that's just coach speak. It definitely affects it. And, the excitement, you mentioned the difference when JJ McCarthy stepped inside Chad Bickler Hall and how much of a difference that made. I'm sure that's happening right now when all of a sudden, Bryce Underwood shows up to practice in Tampa and he's throwing and everyone's like, whoa, what's going on?
Are you doing one of those?
And the other thing too, Tanner and I saw him in person for the first time at the Champion Circle at Will Johnson's Toy Drive at Somerset. He is huge. He's all of 6'5". And so I think that all that just changes the vibe. The vibe changes. And then to your point, that's where you snowball. You get your guy, and then you can snowball that into bigger things and really build this roster. And with, going into this offseason too, you look at the schedule, it's very doable. It's very doable to go at minimum 10-2 and get to the college football playoff, which we saw a lot of teams do this year. So it feels like those expectations all of a sudden are like very attainable instead of, oh, we don't know exactly what the season is going to look like.
I'm curious to see what they do. If they start them from day one, or if it's let's massage and see how things are going to go. We'll put the veteran in there and kind of run with them. I will tell you, the man has, and I call him a man, I mean, the way he's handled everything, he's a kid, he's a teenager. We've covered him since he's a freshman, and the environment around his season opener when we made it our Channel 7 game of the week to open this year, you guys, I've rarely seen that around college athletes. I mean, the line to get an autograph from him, or people try to take a selfie with him or a picture afterwards, was 30 deep for about a half an hour as he tried to slowly make his way to the locker room. It was insane. And we had gotten an interview with him pregame to run in our coverage, and everyone was trying to get a postgame interview because he won on some late crazy run and the throw to get the season opening win. And so everyone's like, we got to put the punctuation mark on our coverage. And it was to the point where there were so many influencers and video people trying to get stuff, and content, not influencers, but content creators and kids. It was, Bevel just shut it down. They just like hit him in the locker room. But he came back out, and to his credit, man, like he has been handling the pressure and the spotlight, I think pretty well. And also that video that he put out when he finally committed was pretty sweet.
That was a good video.
I watched it a few times, which I do follow recruiting, but that was kind of different. Brad, I wanted to ask you, I mean, with your pulse on the area in Detroit, Metro, do you think that Bryce Underwood at Michigan, and if it works out the way, like Trevor Lawrence, right? Like, 3-year starter, national champ, like the way you kind of hope that that he can hit that ceiling. Do you think that could help Michigan kind of create more of a wall around Southeastern Michigan and the state of Michigan? Because I think about like Notre Dame has a number of guys on their team that are from the state of Michigan, and we're always comparing, Michigan to Ohio State and vice versa. State of Ohio kids, where do they go? They go to Ohio State, right? So, I mean, what do you think? I just always wonder that if Michigan has an opportunity to ever really build a fortress like some state programs do in their home state.
We cover Michigan very closely. We've had the deal. I also cover Michigan State, and I got to see firsthand how Mark D'Antonio built a winner, to his credit and with his words, with 3-star players, and then that started to build. I'd never bet against Michigan State. I actually like Jonathan Smith a lot. I think what they're building there is really solid. And then I would say no right away, just because the biggest factor is the NIL thing, right? I mean, if the ISBIAs decide tomorrow that they want to start throwing a bunch of money at Michigan State, you could say all those things and Michigan win, but things could change.
Right.
It's a different wild world than when the three of us were growing up and so many of us are accustomed to. And I think it's also better when it's more competitive in the Big Ten, when the rivalry is good and they're pushing each other, it's better. But to your question, to your point, when kids in this area think of a program as the program, whether it's Michigan football or when it was Michigan State basketball forever, you're good, you're in Michigan, you go to one of those programs within that sport. There's definitely something to that. How long it can ride out for a given number of years,
right?
I mean, Michigan just won the national championship, and here we are,
of course,
a year and a month late, not even a year and a couple weeks later, talking about like, okay, can Bryce swing it? Like, if that doesn't carry momentum in this NIL age, I think it's really just shows the power of the dollar. Not to completely throw your point down.
No, and I think I'm coming from it, and I know like you think about like LSU or Ohio State or Georgia. I mean, Georgia has Atlanta if they want it on wrap, right? Even with Georgia Tech there. Michigan, obviously, with Michigan State has a little bit more competition, but it's just, I will say it's a little frustrating when it's like there's an in-state kid and it's like, come on, and they go to Notre Dame or they go to another school.
Okay, to that point, leaving the state, that's always
right.
Me too. I've always been like, what are you doing? Why wouldn't you stay?
Right, because there's a couple guys on Notre Dame's roster that I know Michigan was after pretty heavily in their recruitment. So I don't know. I just like a little envious of Ohio State because you look at the roster and it's like all these 5-stars that just stay home, and it's like obviously Michigan just did that with Bryce, but the way I was kind of thinking about that with regards to Bryce is it's from the area, he stayed home. Again, if he hits on this ceiling, like. It just creates a pathway of kids to be like, I want to be like Bryce. And that was more where my question was coming from.
No, I do get it. I understand that. And, when I was in high school, I had friends getting recruited. I mean, I was the 3rd string tight end, bumped up to 2nd string tight end for our senior year. Whew, you're talking to an athlete here.
But state champion.
No big deal. No big deal.
I also won a state championship. Justin, sorry, buddy.
I did not. So you guys got.
What's that?
Where'd you go?
I went to a school in Omaha, Nebraska, Elkhorn High School, Class B, 2011 state champ, 2nd biggest classification. So played with a couple guys that went to Nebraska. So it was decent football. It was fun.
Brother Rice 2005 shout out. But what I was getting at was that I had so many Warrior teammates getting college letters, and a ton of them went to play college football. I followed recruiting so closely. And to your point of what you're trying to say, yes, you would like to see if there's a pipeline to say if that's the standard. You're here, you stay here. But I don't know, maybe it is just the competition between Michigan and Michigan State, and then guys just look and say, maybe I'll go elsewhere. And
right.
I don't know. I do think NIL just blows all this up in its face too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it definitely does. All right. So fun fact though, I did not put 2 and 2 together. You beat my school, Hudsonville, in that state championship. And I was on the other sideline as the ball boy because
no way.
Yes. I was a bit younger than you, still in middle school, so I was the ball boy. So you broke my heart. 14-7, I think it was.
Don't blame me. I literally just played one game or one play in that game. Can I tell you a story about that game though?
Yeah.
If people stayed around this long, they obviously care about us. So thank you for watching. The day before, my brother, I don't know, now I'm losing sight of it. Did my brother and I both go to the Thanksgiving game? My brother at least was there. And we were at the end of the game screaming for players throwing their gloves up. And my brother got Roy Williams to throw him his gloves. And Roy Williams had huge hands. And they were these awesome gloves that just slipped on like an oven mitt. And they were white on top, black on the bottom. And it was just this huge thing with sticky stuff all over them. And he slipped it on. And the next day, my brother goes, dude, you got to wear him to the state championship. I know you're going to play, but you always you're the guy that warms up the quarterback. You're going to Ford Field. You just got to be the guy wearing them. So we're warming up the quarterback at school before we get on the bus to go to Ford Field.
Right.
And Kaunda Hancock, my teammate, we called K, had the biggest hands on the team. He was a safety and a wide receiver. And he comes up, he goes, I've never been able to find gloves that big for my hand. Can I try them on? So he puts them on his hand. They fit like a glove. What's up, big dog? You're back for more? My son's back for more. Oh, you're looking for your Lego. He puts his gloves on his hands. He goes, can I wear them? I'm like, dude, I'm not going to play. You're going to play. You play both ways. He had 2 interceptions in the game, including a one-handed one in the back of the end zone to steal a touchdown. And that picture, front page of the Free Press the next morning. My parents come running into my room. They're like, Brad, Cohn has shouted you out in the Free Press article with Mick McCabe. It's all in here. And my brother goes, he wakes up, he goes, Brad didn't give him those gloves. I got them for Roy Williams, man. Come on.
That's so fun. I remember that specific interception. It was an unbelievable play in the corner of the end zone.
Brad, when you real quick when you played Catholic Central, was Mike Martin? Was he at what he was? I mean, obviously not at that point, but was he on the other side? Was he wreaking havoc against you guys a little bit?
Yeah, my senior year, he was a junior.
Okay,
and we beat him twice.
Yeah, that's
which I remember a lot.
That is my, I think honestly, sneaky pick for me of my all-time favorite Wolverine. He was about the only guy in that era before Brady Hoke that was a good defender. And so I wore 60 in high school because I loved Mike Martin. So, yeah, he was a beast, man. One of my favorite players.
Wow. But yeah, I do remind him that we beat him in high school all the time.
I love it.
I would do the same. I would too.
For sure. So, all right. So speaking of a couple minutes ago, you mentioned things being better when things are competitive, especially here in the state of Michigan. Right now, Big Ten basketball is awesome. Yeah, Michigan is back. Feels like they're back under Dusty May. It's a long season. We're only in mid-January right now, but they're already, they're undefeated in Big Ten play. So is Michigan State. They keep battling. Every time one of them has a game, they jump to number 1 in the Big Ten. Then the other team does it the next day because they win too. So I don't know. Have you been around Dusty much yet or not really?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, you don't like to say that people win the press conference, but he won his press conference and it was almost immediate. You could say, oh my gosh, this program's changing overnight. It's changing overnight. And then I started talking to people. The program is changing overnight. We did a one-on-one conversation. And then I saw him at the spring game right away. And I went to reintroduce myself. He's like, no, Brad, we talked on the court. I remember. How are you, man? Good to see you. I'm like, oh, this dude's smooth, man. He's really smooth and he's cool. And just little things, man. The way the glasses, walking into fraternities, trying to see kids. It was instant where, again, in this age of NIL, you need a coach who's buying in. A lot of great coaches have stepped away from the profession, man. This is the perfect coach in this era right now to step in at a program like this, grabbing guys in the right pieces that have gelled. They're fun to watch, which he promised they would be. Wolf's a stud. And I just think it's a night and day. I mean, it's wild how quickly this thing has turned over.
Yeah, and it's no shot at Juwan, right? Things just unfortunately didn't work out. I think that was that's the storybook, right? It actually is. You hoped what Juwan could do, what Jim Harbaugh did, right? Come back to your alma mater. But unfortunately things just didn't go that way. But I think it's, I got to give Ward Manuel credit for making the move and hiring the right guy, it seems already. But what you've seen is exactly what I've seen as well. And just, he does everything the right way. And it's almost like, okay, is he human? When's he going to screw something up? But he's always seeming to say the right thing. His guys are really good guys too, that he brought in, which to bring in that many transfers and all of them are good human beings on top of just good basketball players. Even the little things that I noticed is guys help each other up after every play. They're always high-fiving each other. The huddles right before they go into the locker room at halftime, it's a players-only huddle before they go in. So it's just those little things. I think he seems like the guy that's like, it's a bit Dan Campbell-esque where it's like, we're not focused on winning the national title right now. We're focused on like being the best we can be today. And once you keep doing, if you keep doing those little things day after day, it's going to grow into something big.
I don't know where John Beeline said it, but it just popped up on social media this morning. So I'm sorry if I'm not quoting the right outlet. I'm not quoting any outlet, so I'm definitely not quoting anybody. I'll quote what I saw Beeline say, that he was like, this is a sneaky good team that reminds me of a Final Four team that we had. He's like, watching them, that we can go. And I don't disagree. I think actually, and I know you started it, watching Michigan State win against Penn State, they had a bunch of guys in double figures the same type of way. These teams have both had stars over the years and not advanced. It's going to be really fun to watch Michigan State like we watched under those Beeline Izzo rivalry years, where they're just kind of a balanced unit of guys that can distribute the ball, crash the glass, play the right way. And it's also really kind of fun basketball to watch. I think the last couple of years, Michigan hoops is really hard to watch.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
They got me staying up, man. Like, I'm an old man, and they got me staying up, these 9, 10 o'clock tip-offs.
The West Coast games is those are tough. Those are tough. But yeah, I mean, I for one, I don't like watching Michigan State win. I don't like watching Ohio State win or really any other team in the Big Ten for the most part. But I think when Michigan and Michigan State are at the top of the Big Ten, it is so fun once, the Spartans come to Ann Arbor and Michigan goes to East Lansing. It doesn't make for there's no better environment out there. So I'm excited. I think it's coming up here early February, right around the Super Bowl time, actually, is the first Michigan State game. And so, I think that just in general, I'm excited for, it feels like we're already like, gunning for a Final Four right now in year one, but nobody's even thinking about like, okay, what happens under Dusty and, for 5 years or 10 years. So
it happens fast in hoops. And by the way, I don't want to be one of those triple talking head boxes where Michigan State fan grabs it and I'm the one smiling along as an accomplice to you saying that you don't like them winning. I have affection for Tom Izzo. I got people in that program. So I never root against Michigan State hoops, man. So just so you can get my talking head to all
there you go.
That are looking at it. It's a fun rivalry, man.
Always the diplomat, right?
Yeah, man. In this spot, listen, you can take it a bunch of different ways. You can be a homer for one program or another. And, me being so closely tied to Michigan football over the last few years because of the deal that our station has, it's easy for people to paint that picture. But no, man, I grew up watching both programs. I was the first kid in my family to go to college. So no ties other than just I like people in both places. And I'm happy when schools in our state succeed, man.
For sure. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up here, though. I mean, like I said in the beginning, you've been a busy man. Every team is good. So you're probably going from Chrysler to the Breslin to Michigan Stadium to Schembechler Hall to LCA to Ford Field to the practice facilities. So but the way that you put it, though, in the beginning was it's a good problem to have, right? It's fun.
Yeah, come here, dude. My son's over here. He's creeping. He wants to get back on.
I love it. He's
who's winning this Lions game this weekend?
Lions.
Okay, good pick.
There you go. And like you,
dude, it's a great problem to have. It's the best kind of busy. That's what I keep saying. When you ask me to come on, I'm like, dude, we're busy, but it's the best kind of busy. Everybody in their life is busy. I'm a kid who grew up in Troy, and my wife grew up here. We have kids. We get to raise our family around our parents, and I watched for years this Lions fan base suffer. I watched what this Pistons team could do to re-energize the city, and just different types of communities that the Tigers awakened, that the Red Wings kept alive for so long. This is a great sports town. I am living the dream that I wanted to live. And so I'm never going to complain. I'll complain a little bit about being tired, right, Matthew? Yeah. My son's sitting over here, right? But we reach for a Celsius, we motor on, and we eat it up. Like, I get to go to the Lions game and watch a divisional playoffs game on Saturday and cover it and bring to the people what these guys have to say. It's great. It's a great problem to have in this town right now where people are channel surfing and going, do I watch the Wings? Do I watch the Pistons tonight? Both are hot. Michigan's on. Oh, shoot, man. Michigan State's on. Oh, my gosh, dude, Michigan State and Michigan hockey's on. Like, two great programs there contending every year. We live in a great town, and finally all these teams are cooking. They're red hot. But Tanner, we started with you in that Lions hat, man, and right now the attention is on that organization, rightfully so. The building is hot. I'll tell you what, if there's any doubt right now, I mean, famous last words when people pull this clip up, but I have full confidence in the world that they go take care of business this weekend.
I love it. I love it. Well, you did have a viral clip last weekend, I believe, that was on ESPN and everything else too. So why don't we do that again? Let's win and we can get another viral clip.
I know. I actually just asked the Lions today. I was like, can we do that? Can we run it back on the tunnel thing? And they said, no, we have too many responsibilities post-game. But we will find a way. We will find a way. And that was the real raw moment, man. Al-Quadin Muhammad, if people didn't see it, he walked up the tunnel with us and we had set up an interview with a player, and he had that big third down sack. Aiden Hutchinson's going crazy on the big board. He comes down with the play to stop the drive. They go back to Aiden on the video board. He's going crazy. He comes up the tunnel. They're like, you have Al-Quadin? And he goes, hey, my son's with me. Can he just stand here? I was like, stand here? We got to have him talk, man. So and he says his dad, I'm so proud of my dad. We pray all the time for moments like this. I love my dad. I'm getting emotional. Everybody online, once we put it out there, gets emotional. People watching it on our air get emotional. And we get a knock on the door from ESPN. They said, can we run that interview? Like, yeah, man, that's great. That'd be friggin' awesome.
That's awesome. Oh, congratulations to you. Congratulations to them and the Lions. No, appreciate all of your coverage, honestly. A, you've been a good friend to me, but B, you've just been awesome covering everything Michigan sports. I personally, and I think a lot of people agree with this, that they look forward to your take on whatever your coverage of it. So if you aren't already following, go follow Brad. He's on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, on all of it. I don't know if your TikTok's getting banned. I don't know if you're a TikTok star, but yeah.
You know what? Brad does not dance here on TikTok. I just provide more interview content there. So if you like the stuff on different platforms and you're on TikTok more, I am there with the same type of football content, and you won't see me dancing.
All right. Well, Brad Galli, appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming on. Exciting times here in the state of Michigan. For us, you can follow us at Blue by 90 on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Blue by 90 Podcast on YouTube, and blueby90.com. We appreciate you. Go Blue.
Go Blue.